Welcome back to Tech Tips. In today's short segment, I'm going to talk to Amer Mustafa, who's our Executive Vice President and Head of IT Services Delivery. We're going to talk about SharePoint, which is part of Office 365. Many business owners and decision makers, when they hear about SharePoint, get really excited at the opportunity of moving all of their files and documents from their on-premises server into the cloud and doing away with their server. However, as we'll see in our discussion with Amer, this is sometimes an unrealistic expectation. So stay tuned for our short discussion with Amer. Thanks. So hey, Amer, how are you doing today?
Pretty good, thanks. How about you?
Good. So our discussion point for today for our audiences, we were discussing this earlier. As you know, many organizations are embracing Office 365, or now we call it Microsoft 365. And we're hearing that customers find SharePoint very attractive. Often organizations think they can simply shift their file storage into SharePoint and do away with their file storage. That seems really attractive because moving to the cloud allows organizations to kind of get rid of their server hardware. But my question for you is that a realistic expectation out of SharePoint, that organizations can simply take their gigabytes of file storage and move it into SharePoint and move away from on-site file storage?
Yeah, I mean, you're right that this is something that a lot of customers want to do. And I would say that it does require a little bit of caution. So network shared drives and the SharePoint document library, they do have some similarities, in the sense that they can both be used to store files and share files. But they also have slightly different design objectives. So in a lot of cases, organizations have a shared network drive. It's usually mapped to a common drive letter that users can use to access a common repository of shared files. What we've seen is that a lot of organizations, they have quite a lot of archival information in those network shares. In many organizations, they may lack structure and organization of the file share. And they may find that between 80 and 90% of the files that are in those network shares are just not used anymore. And they may be sort of archival. SharePoint, on the other hand, was designed as a collaboration platform that can also store files. So the first thing I'd say there is that, SharePoint has a document library, but that's only one of its features. So it was primarily designed as a collaboration platform that has file storage as a kind of a by the way. So there are some limitations to that file storage. For example, with SharePoint, there's a limitation in terms of the number of files that you can store and still have it perform and behave properly, as well as there are file naming restrictions that are different from file naming restrictions that are on your network drives. So before embarking on any kind of migration project, it's important for companies to ask themselves the following questions, like, which files do we really need to move over to SharePoint? I would recommend that you leave the archival files on a network share or some other archive storage. It may not be as convenient to get to when you're working in a cloud format. But since it's data that people may hardly ever access, then that should be fine. Also be aware that there are file naming conventions that just won't work on SharePoint. So you need to vet the file names on your network share before you attempt to move them to SharePoint. SharePoint also allows you to access files using different methods. So you could access files through a web browser, you could use Microsoft Teams to access those files, or you could sync the SharePoint document libraries to your computers. So you need to really be clear as to which method you want to adopt for your organization in terms of accessing those files, and then provide suitable training to your staff before you do the migration. You also need to decide on which groups of people in the organization will access or will require access to which files, and then create a structure that's appropriate for that type of access.